This video is section R.7, part 3. In part 3, we're going to look over addition and subtraction of rational expression. The rules for adding and subtracting rational expressions are the same as the rules for adding and subtracting rational numbers, fractions. First, you need to find the common denominator for both expressions. Then, you either add or subtract the numerators and keep the common denominator, just like fractions. The method we will use for adding and subtracting rational expressions with different denominators is called the least common multiple method. The least common multiple method uses the polynomial of least degree that has each denominator polynomial as a factor. So we're going to factor completely the polynomial in the denominator of each rational expression. So we'll say we have two rational expressions and we're supposed to add them or subtract them. First thing we'll do, factor the denominator. Now this is if they're different. We'll see what happens if they're the same. Of course, we know if the denominators are already the same, those are the easier ones to do. The least common multiple of the denominators is the product of each of these factors raised to a power equal to the greatest number of times that the factor occurs in the polynomials. Write each rational expression using the least common multiple as the common denominator, and then add or subtract the rational expressions found in step 3. Make sure you simplify your results down to lowest terms, as always. Okay, so the directions maybe sound a little familiar from working with fractions, but maybe sound a little weird too. But once we go through a few steps and a few examples, then it'll make sense. Okay, so our first example, of course, is one of the easy ones we see immediately. We already have a common denominator. So to perform the indicated operation, which is subtraction, and simplify our result, well, we don't have to factor these denominators to find the common denominator because they already have one. So what we do is what it said here. Then you either, once you have a common denominator, add or subtract the numerators and keep the common denominator. So we keep our common denominator. So I'm going to just keep that x plus 1. And I'm going to perform the subtraction in the numerator. So the subtraction is take 9x plus 1. I'm using parentheses to make it really clear. That's my first numerator, and subtract my second numerator. Now, I hope you'll see why it's so important that I use parentheses. Because in my next step, what do you have to do with that negative? Well, we're going to have to distribute it to both terms in the parentheses. We can take those parentheses off the first one, and as we take off the second, we're distributing that negative, and the negative of negative 2 is positive 2. So you can see if I didn't use those parentheses, I would have a negative 2 right here, and I would be heading towards an incorrect answer. So now we'll combine like terms. 9x minus 6x is 3x, and 1 plus 2 is 3. And this is all over x plus 1. And remember though, it said to simplify the result, and then we're to leave our result factored. Okay, so we don't want to multiply anything, we want it all factored. Well, can I factor the numerator? Can I factor the denominator? That's how I simplify, right? Well, I can factor the numerator. I can pull out a 3. I cannot factor the denominator any further. But now I notice, hey, I have a common factor. So all of this simplifies to just the number 3 with no variables. Okay, that one was easy because we had a common denominator. This one doesn't look so easy because it doesn't look like we have a common denominator. But you may recall that we said before, if you have a minus b and b minus a, now before we saw them one divided by the other, but we did see something we could do with that. We can change it, this one, to a minus b by just taking out a negative. See that? Then that's the same thing as this a minus b, but with a negative in front of it, because that would be the a would be negative, the b would be positive. So we're going to use that idea here. And we're going, instead of trying to come up with some common denominator any other way, this is what we're going to do. We're going to keep the first fraction as it is, the first rational expression as it is, and we're going to add to that 1 with the denominator where I'm going to take out a negative 1. So that would be negative 4 plus y, because if I distribute that, I get right back to there. Now, let's see what happens next. So keeping that first one the same, here I can say negative 4 plus y is the same as y minus 4. And then we know if you ever have a fraction like 4 over negative 1, that's the same thing as negative 4 over 1, or even just negative 4, right? So it doesn't matter where our negative is. Well, that's what we've got right here. We can bring that negative up, and then what happens? Our denominators are the same. So if I make that negative 1 times 4 over y minus 4, now look at that. Denominators are the same, so we can just pull that all together over y minus 4. What do we have? We have 3y plus, and what's negative 1 times 4? Negative 4. So we have 3y minus 4 over y minus 4. Now, over here we were able to factor and simplify. Can we factor either one of these, the numerator or denominator? Is there a common factor in 3y and 4? There is not. And y minus 4 has no common factor. So we're done. This is our final simplified result. Okay, we'll continue in the next video.